The 1960s were absolutely nuts. You had the Vietnam War, President JFK's assassination, race riots, and civil rights protests. With all this negativity bogging down American culture, we looked into forming new subcultures that were free-spirited and British. Four men from the UK known as the Beatles were sweeping the nation by storm. But while they were living it up in their stardom, the most understated producer in all of rock and roll was making their biggest hit.
Sir George Martin was a London native with a background in classical music. This man could do everything from playing instruments to composing. He also spent some time in the Royal Navy for a little bit, which led him to go to Guildhall School of Music and Drama. Promptly after graduating, he started his career at EMI Parlophone Records and worked his way up from an assistant to the head of the record company, where he was introduced to Brian Epstein. And Brian Epstein was the manager of the Beatles. Epstein presented him with a recording they did of Decca, and George Martin has been on record saying that he found them rather unremarkable. Despite being rather unremarkable, he gave them a shot to audition, and through the audition, it still didn't go well for them. Afterwards, George Martin was unimpressed and walked up to each individual band member and said, what didn't you like about that? And funny enough, George Harrison responded, I don't like your tie. And that remark and that quip, that ability to just joke on the fly like that is kind of what gave George Martin the inspiration to take them on and accept them into the label. So after this, they recorded one original song, and after recording the one original song, Paul and John Lennon both begged him to do another one, and that song was Please Please Me. They started recording this song, and it was a slow, somber song at first, and it wasn't working, and they couldn't figure out why it wasn't working. But George Martin suggested to put it into an up-tempo and double time it. And after that, it went off without a hitch, and it was perfect. And even the Beatles can say that they're a little upset that they couldn't come up with, that time change. After they were done recording, George Martin looked at them and said, boys, you just recorded your first #1 hit. And he was absolutely right. It was their first #1 hit. George Martin is often referred to as the fifth Beatle. Not only because he produced, but he also composed and arranged for them on several occasions. The first example of this can be found on the song Yesterday. Paul McCartney originally created this track in his dreams. He dreamt this track up, and it was only a guitar and him, which had never been done before with the Beatles. They've always, incorporated all four of them. And George Martin really urged to just, lean into it being a solo acoustic track and let me accompany it with strings. And Paul McCartney was apprehensive at first, but trusted George Martin, and through doing that, created this new sound, this new blend of classical orchestral with, beautiful singing songwriting. And it was another hit. Within You Without You, personally, it's my favorite song on Sgt. Pepper. It's one of my favorite Beatles songs ever. It's George Harrison fully leaning into his Eastern influence, incorporating the Asian music circle, having tambura and sitar on it, while George Martin accompanied it and kind of juxtaposed it with a Western orchestral feel. They play off of each other beautifully, and it's a beautiful display of two cultures working together to create a new boundary-pushing song that's never been recorded before. George Martin's level of genius is criminally underappreciated even to this day. In the late 60s, after burning through 55 hours of tape, recording Strawberry Fields Forever, they were left with two takes, one upbeat and accompanied with strings, and the other one was a little bit slower and more somber and relaxed. And at the end of it, John Lennon liked both takes of it, and he wanted to use both of them. So George Martin and his engineer pitched one up and pitched the other one down to adjust the key change and to put them on the same tempo, and spliced the two takes and spliced them together to create one song, creating this weird, dreamlike sound to John Lennon's vocals. And it's exactly what Lennon was going for, and that song would not be what it is today without George Martin.
With eyes closed, misunderstanding all you see.
George Martin is one of the most influential producers of all time. His willingness to experiment and fully indulge in the Beatles' weird creative side allowed us to get some new boundary-pushing music. His ability to, adapt and know what needed to go where and add things to the music just to create a more full and more fleshed out experience is just so underappreciated, and it's why we have some of the music we have today. George Martin is by far my favorite producer of all time.